Greetings and good afternoon or good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council of One's Babylon 5 review. I am, of course, your host, the Ambassador, and glad to be back at our normal time and our normal day and everything. And waiting on the rest of the council to get here. So right now, it truly is a Council of One. Anyway, let's pop into the... Oh, for heaven's sake. Hold on a second. My computer's being a little stupid. Reset. And there we go. All right. And to everybody that is in the chat, Lewis Sparrow and Mountains of Elysium. Hope everything goes smoothly with you and the missus today. And we look forward to having you back next week, obviously. And Bureau 31, good afternoon or good evening. Good to have you here as well. Always a pleasure to see you in the chat. So, but yeah, today we are continuing our review of Season 3 of Babylon 5 with the episode A Late... Sorry about the typo on the title, but A Late Delivery from Avalon. And this is a really interesting episode because it does tackle a topic that isn't handled very often in science fiction, at least to the best of my knowledge, it isn't. And that is, of course, the issue of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I honestly think that this episode... At Elysium, there's no apologies necessary. You've got things going on. We all understand that. And hey, your place will always be here. So, but thank you for being in the chat, my friend. And it is good to see you, as always. But yeah, as I was saying, this episode deals with the topic that isn't covered very often in media. At least it hasn't been up until a point. And as I mentioned, that is, of course, post-traumatic stress disorder. And this episode does it in a very entertaining, but very thoughtful and a very, I think, constructive way. And of course, it does have a lot of other parts going on within the episode in terms of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds and that whole situation. You've got a nice little comedic subplot with Mr. Garibaldi, of course. And this was a really cool episode. I just rewatched it a little while ago to kind of refresh my memory on it. But I really did enjoy how this episode was structured and everything. And I did like how the topic was approached, for the simple fact that, not being someone who has ever served in the military, but I've had numerous friends that I knew from high school and so on who did go on into the military. I've worked with a lot of people who either were or are in the military. So I thought the way that they approach this episode in terms of framing it within someone, in terms of the character of Arthur or David McIntyre, portrayed by Michael York. I do want to note that and everything. Michael York had a fairly decent movie career. If I recall correctly, I think he was actually in the movie version of Logan's Run. I'd have to do some double checking to find out for sure. But Michael York is a fairly well-known actor. He, I think, went more back to stage acting or whatever. And, but yeah, I really did enjoy his performance. And I am no longer a council of one. We are now a council of two. And here he is.
Hey.
Lord Koj, good to see you, man.
Happy to be here, brother.
Yeah, good to see you. I just literally gotten started a few minutes ago, so glad you're here.
Yeah, where are the rest? They're stuck in hyperspace?
Well, one's stuck in hyperspace. Zod, I don't know where Zod is, honestly, to be honest with you. I think he got stuck in third space, perhaps. He's still fighting those third space aliens. And Fiona is MIA.
Oh, no!
So, we don't know where Fiona's at. But, yeah, honestly, like I said, I just got started with the episode, and
okay, great.
So I'll yield the floor. And the things I had brought up so far were, in fact, the whole issue of how this episode deals with the issue of PTSD,
Right,
post
right.
traumatic stress disorder. And I thought that they did a very good job of approaching this topic. So I'll pop Lycium's comment up here real quick.
All right.
So anyway, it was interesting how Marcus and Franklin approached his PTSD. Koj, I'm getting a little bit of echo on my end, so you might check
Oh,
your.
let me adjust something on my end. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay, man. It's all right. So, and just real quick to the chat, Isaac the Film Geek. Isaac, it is good to see you, bud. I know it's been a little bit. I am sorry. I will be in touch with you. There's been a lot going on in real life IRL, as you young kids like to say. But Isaac, I will be in touch with you, bud, and everything, because I still want us to work on something. So, but it's good to see you, and thank you for tuning in today. I hope if you're able to stay for the entire thing, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. So, and hey, everybody, if you have not checked out Isaac the Film Geek, he is a good channel. He does covers a lot of film topics and everything. He does cover some internet drama, to put it that way. But I've come to look to Isaac and everything as a good content creator on YouTube. So definitely go give him a check out. Follow him on Instagram, and definitely give him a follow on Twitter. So, but yeah, okay, there we go. I think you got the problem.
Very good.
So, I'll go back to Elysium's comment here. It was interesting how Marcus and Franklin approached his PTSD. Franklin did right, but lacked compassion and tried to get David back. David did the compassionate thing and worked with Arthur. Koj, your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love this subject, and I like that. This Elysium comment is great because what's interesting before they even approach quote unquote Arthur, right?
Yes.
Marcus and Franklin have an interesting discussion about the emblem of the little badge of the human and Minbari symbol for the Rangers. And he got into a little bit of the philosophy of their martial arts way of thinking. And Marcus tells Franklin, they taught me how to breathe, how to fight, how to die, and they taught me terror. And then Franklin's like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And he's like, no, you don't want to know about terror. And I found that being the end part was a good opening of what PTSD is about. In a way, PTSD is like one of the results of experiencing terror.
Yes.
And
I would agree with that.
Which is something of we see Franklin, later when he goes on his walkabout, he experiences his taste or lesson of terror later on. But at this time, Marcus says, no, you don't want to know it. It's that bad. Or Marcus kind of has an idea of what kind of person Franklin is, because Marcus is very observant.
Yes.
So I also feel like when Marcus says, no, you don't, because I feel like Marcus knows him enough to say, I don't think you understand or are ready for that yet, which could be true. And then we see this character who is Arthur, but he's from the what caused the Minbari War.
Yes.
So he has this post-traumatic stress, and his mind went to this place for peace and sanity and making sense of the horror, which is one of the results of facing terror. So it opened up beautifully with that, and then they got to face it without even. I don't know. It's just fascinating how they went about it, because Franklin really went at a very typical medical process, like, oh, this is unhealthy, whereas I feel Marcus went on a spiritual process, and this guy is not experiencing anything like dementia or chemically imbalanced, but there is a trauma that his mind got trapped in or saved in, and I think that's the debate, right?
Yeah. Well, then the interesting thing for me is with this episode, as I mentioned, being someone who has not gone through combat, who has never served in the military or anything. And as I mentioned, I've had numerous friends, both that I went to school with and the people that I worked with who have served in the military, and there are a few and everything online that I interact with and everything who also served in the military. And even having family members, in particular my maternal grandfather who served and everything during World War II. I would talk to my mother and my grandmother in particular, and I would ask them, did Granddad ever talk about the war? And they were like, no, he never really did. And the interesting thing for me is as I got to learn more, as I studied what post-traumatic stress actually was, I came to understand that war changes you, war scars you and everything. And this episode really helped me to conceptualize what a person who has both post-traumatic stress and survivor's guilt goes through. Because if you think about it, Arthur also has survivor's guilt, much like Sinclair did, because they are both veterans of the Earth Minbari War, and they come at this from a similar perspective. Although with Sinclair, there are extenuating circumstances on his end, but in terms of Arthur or David McIntyre, the character's actual name, he regressed. He escaped into a fantasy. He escaped into a fantasy, quote unquote, to help cope with the trauma that he has faced. And he did it in a way that was constructive for him. It helped him to cope. It helped him to survive mentally. And honestly, for me, David McIntyre or Arthur is another casualty of the Earth Minbari War. Just he didn't die, but his spirit was broken. His spirit was fragmented, and that fragmentation led him to believe that he was Arthur Pendragon. And I'll pop Elysium's comment up here. It was interesting how Jakar reacted to Arthur, not knowing David was suffering from PTSD, believing in him without the baggage we humans would have to someone claiming to be an ancient king returned. Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a very interesting observation, Elysium, because if you think about it, Jakar, being a Narn, would not necessarily know about any of Earth's folklore or myths or legends, in particular the legend of King Arthur. Now, I will say that I do like the fact that during one of the council meetings, Franklin does bring up the fact that there had recently, I think this did take place in the 90s, and then they did finally do that film with Clive Owen and for heaven's sakes, what's her name? Keira Knightley, called King Arthur. That is kind of a pseudo historical retelling of the Arthurian legend, because there had been historical evidence to suggest that there was a character like Arthur that may have existed once upon a time in our in Earth's past.
Like the real guy who the legend was based off of, per se.
Yeah.
Or inspired by.
Yeah. There's actually, I know I've mentioned channels that I watch periodically, and I'll probably put the link to that particular video. It's called Overly Sarcastic Production. And they actually did a video discussing the Arthurian mythos and how it had evolved throughout the centuries and so on. And they do a really good job of breaking it down and giving you a good sense of exactly where the legend of Arthur Pendragon or King Arthur came from. So, but I like the fact that they do link their conversation to the recent historical findings that had been done here on Earth in this particular episode to address it and say the legend may have been embellished, but there may have been an Arthur or Arcturus, as I think he's referred to in that Clive Owen film. And I like the fact that they do reference the mythos throughout the episode, particularly at the very end when Marcus and Franklin are talking with one another, and Marcus makes the allusion, "Well, who's to say they him? Kosh isn't Merlin," and and so on. But yeah, I honestly, this episode has a lot of moving pieces in it, and I did appreciate the balance of it as always. Yeah, I'll pop up Elysium. Actually pop up Excelsior's comment here. And Excelsior, good to see you. Glad you're here today. Did he have any interactions with Delenn ahead of what I recall of the ending? If it's the episode I recall, wouldn't he have been a true seeker to the Minbari in a sense? Excelsior, maybe he might have been a true seeker, but no, he did not have any interactions with Elise, with Delenn until the very, very end, where the Franklin and Marcus finally puzzle out that that she is, at least in David's mind,
The Lady of the Lake.
The Lady of the Lake, who gave Arthur Excalibur, the Sword of Kings. Mm-hmm. So, no, I think they did that deliberately, to be honest, for the simple fact that they wanted to have that narrative flow, that narrative structure, because this episode does lean heavily on the book, The Once a Future King by E.B. White, which is referenced in, for heaven's sakes, in at the tail end of X2 X-Men United by Charles Xavier. I kind of am a fan of I am a fan of the Arthurian legend. I always thought it was a very cool piece of mythology within the world, and I love both adaptations that we have gotten thus far. Both the Excalibur film, which came out in the 80s. I did a review of it a couple of years ago. Well, it seems like a couple of years ago now. And I did enjoy the Clive Owen version as well, because both movies give a nice balance to the whole legend of King Arthur.
Have you seen the Hallmark special? It was a 2-part movie TV special of Merlin with Sam Neill. Have you seen that one?
Yes. I absolutely.
I love that one. They even have an unabridged one available on Amazon Prime to buy. Yeah. And the sequel. I love that so much.
Yeah. When they no, you're fine, man. I actually remember watching it on NBC and everything, because NBC was one of the one of the networks that actually broadcast they ran it as a miniseries, and I really enjoyed it and everything, because one, it's Sam Neill, and anything that Sam Neill is in is usually very good. And two, it was part of the Arthurian legend, and anything connected to that for me is a real treat to watch and everything.
And I love the style, because I was a fan of the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, the BBC 80s. It felt like like a continuation of that kind of style of narrative of TV and fantasy adventure telling. Ooh, it was so good.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'll pop up Elysium's comment here. My favorite line in the episodes: "Eyes as yours were never meant for tears, dear lady." Yeah. Yeah, I have to.
That's beautiful.
Well, and it's Michael York speaking it, and Michael York, I think, honestly did a very, very good job in this episode, portraying the character of David McIntyre, aka Arthur. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Garibaldi subplot, his beef with the post office, and
his anchovies and pepperoni with the post office. Not so much beef.
Yeah, good point. But I absolutely positively love that whole section of the episode, and I love how it paid off as well, because Garibaldi at the end gets one up on the.
I forgot his name, but the postal guy, right?
Yeah, the postal guy. I'll pop up Excelsior's comment here. I read a series of books decades ago that when Halcyon, Mirren, Arthur, I believe they were quite historical. I can run and find the Arthur if you're interested.
Ooh, nice.
Excelsior, if you want to, cool. Anything. Excelsior, I can't remember if you're on Twitter or on Instagram or anything, but if you follow me, send me a DM with that stuff because I honestly, as I mentioned, I am a huge fan of the Arthurian mythos. Love it to death. I do. Everything. I've always been a fan of mythology, so I'm just wacky that way. But
Oh, I understand.
I absolutely I love that whole issue between Garibaldi and he's like, ever since we broke away from Earth, who's been paying for all this? And he's like, what do you want? He's like, 101 credits. He's like, I'll just, I do. I love Jerry Doyle. The guy is such a shame that he passed because he was so. I'm gonna have to go look. I'm gonna have to look up some of his. I'm gonna see if he's got any videos of his comedy bits on YouTube or anything because him as Garibaldi always makes me laugh. He does. He always makes me laugh. Okay, and I'll pop up Elysium's comment here. In the B5 wiki, they say in the notes, Mordred is Morden, and Morgana or Morgan Le Fay is Anne Sheridan as she becomes an agent of the shadows. I could see that. I could.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Well, and when Garibaldi and one of the security guys goes in to get his package, and he's like, "We just went up against Earth Force, and you're worried about the post office." He's like, "Yeah, but with the post office, we can actually get in trouble." Well,
there's no fighting chance.
No, we had a chance against those cruisers and everything. We're fighting a bureaucracy. And well, in this case, Mr. Garibaldi fought City Hall and he won.
Hey.
Oh, okay. All right. Stephen Lawhead, the Arthur cycle or the Pendragon cycle. Excelsior, thank you. I will definitely give that a look, man. Thank you very much. If they'd still be in date. I don't care. I'll look it up. I have a good way. I have a good ability to track stuff down, particularly if I really want it. And as I've mentioned several dozen times now, I love King Arthur. I love the whole myth. I love the movies that have been done about it and everything around it, including this episode of Babylon 5.
Yes,
but Koj, any thoughts you want to share on the episode? Anything in particular you want to dig into?
Oh, so I'm a Jakar fan, and I love Jakar's involvement in this because he's still trying to gather heroes of his own and be a part of a gathering of heroes. Because I feel like the Narn culture, as a people, they have their own PTSD as far as like their obsession with the Centauri. And granted, this Jakar has limited information of Earth history. It's like a hobby to aliens. So coming across Arthur and fighting alongside him so joyously, and seeing Jakar drunk was just beautiful gold.
Yes,
I'm like, that's probably Andreas Katsoulis's like hangout at like rap parties and all that. But what I really love is that Arthur, this guy went back to become Arthur to find peace and to complete some tasks, some journey. Because when he saw them, open fire on the Minbari ship that caused him to have all this trauma, he was out in space and he experienced that trauma in space. So he kind of lost himself in space, away from home. So he didn't come home at all in a way. And this way was his journey to come home, to find the Lady of the Lake and deliver that. But at the same time, when Jakar sees him, he's seen this guy who's just dedicated to not just a mission, but a code of ethics, a code of arms that is just, that is serving, that is saving, that is protecting, that is defending, which is the theme of what the Narns should focus on more, rather than becoming the enemy. And this is where I side with Marcus in this situation. Now I work at a neurology office, and we deal with testings with patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. And there's a difference when there's like in my experience, my personal opinion, I feel there's a difference with a spiritual and a chemical imbalance. I feel this guy had a spiritual journey where he had to traumatically go somewhere to make sense and save himself, really, because shooting unarmed people is heinous. It's cruel, it's unfair, it's everything. So he needs to go back to a sense of justice, a sense of what's right, and a duty. And sharing him going there to save his own psyche, and then Jakar seeing that act of bravery to try and save yourself, in turn turns out to him going to the Narn world, and then those themes being shared with the Narns to help them heal and get stronger. So a lot of pluses came out of this from Marcus, who understands terror more than Franklin did.
Yeah, at least for right now. Yeah, and honestly, I loved the interplay between Jakar and Arthur, and I imagine, I don't know if Andreas Kasoulis and Michael York have ever worked together before, but you could just tell they were absolutely having a ball with those scenes. And I do want to address Excelsior Domain's question here. Do you remember the old Disney film with an android and King Arthur's Court? Early childhood memory for me. Excelsior, I don't think I've ever actually seen that one. Now I have seen Sword in the Stone. Another film.
Yeah, I've seen Sword in the Stone.
Oh, I love Sword in the Stone.
Love that chipmunk scene is my favorite. Oh, that's
I know. Oh, I know. I know.
Or squirrel. Sorry.
No, squirrels. Hey, they're easy to confuse. One has a long tail, the other one doesn't. And
squirrels have the long tail, and chipmunks have Alvin. God, that works.
Yes, and their junk is retractable. And the only reason I know that is Robot Chicken. There we go.
Okay.
And Excelsior. There we go. One of the actors was then a voice actor for Star Trek. That's a full circle for me.
Ooh,
dude. That's cool.
I love that.
Yeah, that is very cool. I'll pop up Elysium's comment here. I like how the ideals of ancient myth inspired nobility and others, using the Round Table as a means to free the Narns, not just the Centauri, but from their own class and caste prejudice. Yeah, Elysium, I would agree. Well, and that's the interesting thing about a myth like Arthur Pendragon or King Arthur, is he was an ideal, whether he was real or not. He was an ideal for others to look up to. I mean, he was like one of the world's first true, I don't want to say superheroes because no superpowers, but one of the world's first true heroes. So, because, and he is, if you understand the Christian connection to the Arthurian legend, him being taken off to the island of Avalon and then returning is somewhat of an allegory for the second coming of Christ, because Christ is often referred to as a king. So. But, in terms of Jakar's interactions with Arthur and him just going, we were the good guys, they were the bad guys. And they made a very satisfying thump when they hit when they hit the ground. I do. I love that. I love
Agreeable?
that.
Wait, was it agreeable or I forget the word.
I
Was it
think it was
satisfying?
both. I think he said both. He might have said
He could have been
satisfying and
drunk at the time too.
yeah. Well,
But
and
yeah, that thump
I'm gonna ask
cracked me up.
I'm gonna ask you. I don't know what they were drinking, but it almost looked like they were drinking Kahlua with some booze in it, more than likely. And unfortunately, poor Jakar,
I
even
would
as
guess
a Narn,
some like a malt or a beer closer to mead. That's what I
yeah,
was be
maybe,
thinking.
yeah, that's a possibility.
Or a wine. One of those two. I'd put my bucks on.
The consistency wasn't right for wine, so I'm thinking it's either mead or
That's
some
true.
sort of ale. So more than likely,
Some of that Zima.
yeah. Arthur isn't definitely the type of guy to bring a warm case of Zima to a party uninvited. He's going to bring the. He's going to bring the. He's going to bring the good stuff.
Hey.
So he's going to bring a big old keg of ale that's going to be just perfect.
Yeah, he's like, pass this. I made it a round table for a reason. Pass the mead.
Pass the meat. And I do like Arthur and Marcus's interaction. He's like, oftentimes Sir Gawain had the same problem. That's why we called him that's why we called him the Green.
That was such a cool spin on it.
I know.
Jakar has green spots.
Well, but here's the crazy thing. When Arthur knights Jakar, he dubs him the Red Knight because of his red eyes.
Because the Green Knight's taken, so you got to expand the roster. So red is nice, and I like that he focuses on the red, which because it tells you that he really got close with Jakar to see him eye to eye. Like, because usually when you get to know someone really well, you like when you look at them, you could see them confidently in their eyes, the window to the soul or whatever, and you understand exactly what type of color eyes they had, the detail, and even the personality in the look, and you really get to know the person. So
yeah,
it's like, oh, this is light blue eyes, and so it's naming them the red. I was just like, that was nice because I'm like, they really made a deep connection, and which is probably good aid of liquor, but they were in such good spirits. They fought off like these hooligans and helped a lady who had no like political value, which is usually what Jakar was fighting for. He got to see something that was like stepping out of your way for someone else and doing good. That's probably very, very liberating for him.
And I can just imagine the ruckus that ensued after Arthur took out the initial band of goons. I have a feeling some Drazi, because if you notice, there were some Drazi in that bunch that came in after. I imagine some Drazi got wrecked.
Yeah, Drazi got wrecked. They're like a brawling culture. They're in a lot of trouble every now and then, or some of the people are.
And I do want to address Bureau 31's comment here. And Bureau 31, thank you for doing the legwork on looking this up. It is greatly appreciated.
Whoa.
Earth Force had 245, say almost 250,000 casualties during the war, not including MIA, civilians, and merchant navy. That's a lot of guilt to carry for Arthur. Yeah. Because he... And I just...
He pressed the button. After that button pressed, you can't take it back.
Yeah, and you have to imagine how many other people went through something similar that Arthur did. Because he, as I mentioned earlier, Sinclair was suffering from survivor's guilt, and not to mention he had a period of time lost to him, at least for a while. And it's very heartbreaking to think that although we see Arthur and Sinclair, and obviously Sheridan, I mean, granted, as far as we know, Sheridan doesn't really suffer from PTSD per se, but you can imagine that war left its scars on him as well.
I would say Sheridan does have a different kind of PTSD that probably couldn't be classified as PTSD, because I think he has this willing to keep being drawn to a fight or the fight to do some good.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
he call to arms, Minbari. There's like a lot of, he goes out of his way to do a fight because, he believes in what he's doing, but he in a way I feel like he's a moth to the flame. Like he goes to the fight
Yeah.
because that's kind
Yeah.
of what all he knows and how he can help things. Because it
Mm-hmm.
took him a while to be a good politician, and he got there, but he's still a fighter. And I think it's like one of those things where, like, okay, this is all I understand. So kind of, where can I help and where can I fight? And granted, he's not fighting for the sake of fighting. He's going to do good, but he's just,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just drawn to war, but not in a malicious way.
No. He is the warrior type. He
Mm-hmm.
is the one.
His calling.
He is what would be termed as a sheepdog. And a sheepdog is the first to go into the fray to protect the herd. It's
Exactly.
kind of a lingo that's used amongst law enforcement as well. And it's not meant to be derogatory towards people who are outside of law enforcement by any means.
Right.
But
Because
you
look,
have to.
he would run to Zahadum against all logic and warnings.
Yeah. If you go to Zahadum, you will die.
Right.
And I am Elysium. I can't remember. And Elysium, actually, you got the quote exactly right. So good job, even though you're running on very little sleep and you're kind of busy. I can't remember. You have stolen something valuable. Actually, I think you've stolen many valuable things, but I know. But for now, I will settle for the picture frame. Yeah, you Elysium, you got it right, and I'll pop up his other comment here as well. Plus, David volunteered for and survived the Battle of the Line, one of only 200 to do so. Massive guilt. Yeah. Just like Sinclair. Sinclair suffered from some survivor's guilt as well, as I imagine a lot of people who were on the line did. And to consider how many people or how many ships and how many pilots and everything else were there at the line, and to see all but 200 come home, just absolutely wrenches your heart. But as heavy as the topic of this episode is, Straczynski is able to balance it with humor, but thoughtful humor, not just punchy jokes.
Yeah, something not forced or misplaced.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of Straczynski's great. Yes, it works to help alleviate the tension that you're feeling in this episode, because PTSD is not something to joke about, obviously. So they don't treat the topic with kid gloves by any means. But what they do is they give you the opportunity to see the toll that it can take on a person's psyche in terms of Arthur. But you add in the humor from Franklin and from Marcus, and you add in the humor with Garibaldi and his situation, and of course you add in the humor with Arthur and Shakar, and it all balances out very, very beautifully. And that for me, I think, is what is a really great thing. So, and I do want to bring up one other thing. This episode does see the seeds, the very, very early seeds for the ISA, the Interstellar Alliance. In terms of the mutual defense agreement that the remnants of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds agreed to sign to, that Sheridan and Ivanova put together. And once again, you see Sheridan pushing Ivanova to be the diplomat, not just be the soldier. And she once again shows that evolution of her of that part of her character. And I think, it's a small plot point in the episode, but it's important for the future, just like our good friend Ambassador Kosh says. And I will say I did like the little touch and everything when you mentioned earlier when Marcus was describing the Ranger's medallion, and one of these days I'm going to get a replica of that because that is honestly one of my
Oh, me
favorite
too.
pieces.
It's beautiful.
It is, but I love the. I know you don't hear a lot of it very often in the series, but I have to say, of like fictionalized languages, Minbari is by far one of my favorites.
Oh, you probably picked it up.
With,
I love the Minbari as well. Their language was like it kind of reminded me of some kind of a little bit of like a southeastern mixed with some Romanian and so a little bit of Swedish. It's very fascinating. It had a nice. Oh, it was just nice, and this is cool because it's a nice treat because they have hinted that when we are to see all Narns or all Centaurs or all Minbaris, the actors are acting in English, but in actuality, they're actually speaking their native language. It's just for the episode, they just speak in English so we could be more closer to the story, I think. Because sometimes some of that could be jarring, depending, especially with space operas and fantasies, sometimes. Yes. So they use it very carefully, but to not use it, because when we see in the beginning, that movie, they're all speaking English, but then it comes to the part where Delen's Ranger 1 friend had to go meet up with the humans, which was Franklin, Jakar, and Sheridan. They said, here, I've given you a report of their language for you to learn. So then when he meets them, he's talking English like it's the first time and he's struggling a little bit, but before not. So
LONAW.
It's really cool to hear their language because it seems like they low-key established that they've always spoke their language. They just, for the show, they speak in English as a quick like translation.
Yeah, and Beer Theory one's comment here. The round table is a nice symmetry with the ISA. Yeah, Beer Theory one, I would agree with that. And well, look who decided to pop into the chat.
Hey, how are you,
Vienna? You and me gotta have you and me are gonna have to have a talk.
So she was in third space, actually.
Yes, she was in third space along with Zod and everything, fighting the third space aliens. Well, as the old saying goes, the pen is mightier than the sword. It's okay, Fiona. Glad you're here. Oh, well, there she is.
Hey, welcome.
Well, it's about time.
Yep, here I gotta beat the other thing.
Hey, you gotta put the other thing in its place.
No, my butt was just like, wait a second, today's Friday, right? I don't remember anything anymore.
Oh,
that's why we have the chat room.
I wasn't looking at anything on Twitter except for like, this is a writing conundrum I'm having. Oh no.
Well, maybe you should. It's okay. I'm just teasing. Well, Fiona, we've got a little time yet. Anything? Your thoughts on the episode?
Oh boy. Yeah, let me try to remember which episode was. Oh, Late Delivery from Avalon. Okay, then. Well, I did like the fact that Jakar was like Sir Gawain almost. That was fun. He made a great thump as he hit the floor. And then,
satisfying thump.
Majestic thump. Oh, man.
Satisfying?
I think it is satisfying. But yeah, go on.
No, I'm just finding it interesting that the guy, to cope with the whole thing that he did, he pretended to bury himself in the mythology of King Arthur. I guess maybe because King Arthur had to carry a heavy burden too. So.
And it's to my one of you can correct me, but it's to my knowledge that Arthur himself never got to return the sword to Lady of Lake. It was either Merlin or someone else.
No, it was Bedivere.
But it wasn't Arthur. He never got to.
Well, he was never supposed to because he was too he was too badly injured at the Battle of Camlin.
Exactly.
The whole.
So
the
this
way
is like. Oh, sorry. So this is kind of like a way for Arthur to get a second chance to return the sword, even though it's this guy.
Well, in the legend, Arthur and Mordred meet at Camlin for the final battle, and both of them are so grievously injured that Arthur cannot return the sword return Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake. So he entrusts it to I think it's Percival to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually
That's
Percival does do it. So
I do find it ironic that he was able to give up his guilt to the one person that could have stopped it from the Minbari end as well, because Delenn was the deciding vote.
Yeah, she was on the other end of that ship when it was fired upon. Oh my gosh. Man, since she got hair, I forget her past sometimes. But,
but no,
that's
like,
true.
The one council member was like, yours is the deciding vote, and then she has her own kind of like Avalon quest when the Civil War happens too, you know.
That's right.
Because she's trying to remember things, and it clarifies the fact that, you know, gives her a way out to stay with Sheridan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's so right. Wow, totally missed that circle.
He knows how to do some foreshadowing, even if it's just a character that's there as a guest piece for like one episode or two.
Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating too, because I don't really recall this Arthur interacting with any Minbari other than Marcus, who's human, but he is like probably the closest to that Minbari. But he doesn't get to Minbari until Delenn. And Minbari was on the other end when he, you know, fired the missiles. Wow.
No, he did not interact with any Minbari except for Delenn. He interacted with Shakar, obviously. He interacted with a lot of Earth he interacted with other humans, but Delenn was the one and only Minbari. And like I said, I think the episode was structured deliberately that way, so that she would be the one that takes the sword from him. And honestly, I think that scene is so beautiful and so poignant, and there isn't a drop of dialogue. Not one word of dialogue. It's all done through the music and just them sharing the space with one another. Now, I did want to ask you all. I want to ask you both this question. How did you feel about the black and white clips when David was dreaming? What did you all think of those? Was it too jarring, or do you think it was appropriate when he was in the hallway?
Well, I thought it was more like just to showcase, you know, maybe a bit more of where his overall guilt was at. Like to give a clear contrast. Like it's kind of like this shaded part of his mind he doesn't want to touch. Maybe?
Mm-hmm. Well, how I took it was that usually when we see a current dream or, you know, being in someone's mind like Talia Winters inside that murderer's mind, or even when Ivanova would dream about her mother and then see herself, those are all in like color. Then we have like a lot of flashbacks usually in the show that's in black and white. So this guy had a dream that was in black and white. So it was a dream, but it wasn't in color, but it was in black and white. So how I took that as an audience member is that it's a reoccurring dream because he's had this before, like constantly, which is why it's black and white, because maybe the first time he had it was when he passed out at some point during the Minbari War or something. So I feel like this is just something that he's trapped in and always has this dream.
Well, that, and I think Sheridan's vision, courtesy of Kosh, was in black and white too. I think.
Was it?
It might have been.
Which vision? The one. Wait.
Because the one he had when he was.
Yes, that was in black and white too.
Yeah, by the Stribe.
Yeah.
Well, he referred to it a few times in black and white, and then.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. So it was more they were continuing a thematic element that has been done, and I think throughout. So yeah, I would agree. Anyway, so
but black and white could work because there's no gray area, or there is.
Exactly. So anyway, well, I do want to bring up one thing that Elysium did share with us, and I don't want to neglect it or anything. So give me just give me a minute. Anything? Because he did share. Something in our group chat that was of merit.
Well, if you don't
Uh,
mind, I would like to drop while you look at that. I'd like to mention that the music in this episode is
Sure.
really beautiful because of the theme of
Mhm.
Arthur. Christopher
Yes.
Franke, he was able to use
Mhm.
sound samples of traditional instruments and like medieval instruments, medieval flutes in the background. And
Mhm.
I think I mentioned this before, but back in the 90s, Babylon 5 website, they sold soundtracks to each episode, and I bought the episode to this one because
Oh,
that
cool.
theme of Arthur, where they use the traditional medieval or Arthurian like instruments, I should say, like the acoustics and the flute and the drums. When you hear that, watch it. You listen to that scene again, and then when you have the
Mhm.
soundtrack, the music is so clear and so beautiful. Even the scene when he hands the sword to Delenn, it's so subtle but so beautiful. I think it's one of Christopher Franke's best works. Kind of like in the beginning, the music when there's that
Yes.
montage of the Minbari War, and then kind of has this
Mhm.
bagpipe theme in the background. It's like more of
Yes.
that, and that's just so beautiful.
Yes.
It's,
I
I
I know
love the music
exactly.
in this episode so much.
Yeah, and Koji, I know exactly. I know exactly what you're talking
Right?
about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's
Because
good.
anyway, this is what Elysium had to share from the Lurker's Guide. Histories are written about the soldiers who won their battles, but songs are sung about the soldiers who fell in battle, struggling for a greater cause. What inspires us is the unfinished work, the dream of picking up the fallen standard and taking it 10 more feet up the hill, knowing that even if you fall, the next man in line will take it another 10 feet until finally the hill is taken. Humans are constantly throwing their lives away on causes logic tells us are hopeless, but which in time become real for that reason.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's from the Lurker's Guide, and I think that's very poignant of this episode because, as I mentioned before, Arthur is an ideal to strive for. Though he was flawed and
Mm-hmm.
imperfect, as most of our mythological characters are, he strove for an ideal, and the Knights of the Round Table strove for that same ideal. And yet, several hundred years post the writing of the Arthurian legend, it still sticks with us because it presents an ideal to strive for. That such things as chivalry and nobility and honor and loyalty and duty to others and defense of the helpless are things we should work to promote and to embody in ourselves. For
I just
within
thought,
each, go ahead,
keep
Fiona.
going. No, no, I just totally thought of something when Marcus asked the question, but who's Morgana Le Fay? That's Sheridan's old wife.
Yeah,
She
we don't.
comes back.
We brought that up.
Yeah,
She comes back.
But he
mentioned.
asked it at the time when we don't know yet. I love it.
Yeah,
In the same season.
yeah. We had brought that up earlier, but what I was just gonna say is, um, within each one of us is the seed of that man who may or may not have lived several hundred years ago, known as Arthur Pendragon.
Mm-hmm.
That part of us that strives to be honorable, to be noble, to be selfless, to be courageous and fearless, and to take up the banner or take up the sword. Or as it says in that piece that Elysium shared with us, take up the standard.
Yeah, that sword and banner is that ideal
Mm-hmm.
that's passed on.
Yes.
Because it's passed on to David, who finds himself as Arthur. It's passed on,
Mhm.
which is passed on to Marcus. He loved interacting, which is passed on to the Narns.
Yes.
And that ideal, that's Excalibur right there, the ideals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I'll pop Fiona's comment up here real quick. It's something else we had already mentioned, but you got more succinct than I did. What are you nervous about? Way up against the entire Earth Alliance and 2 carrier groups, but yeah, but this is the post office. This could get us in real trouble. Yeah, and thank you for giving a better quote than I was able to. So
That's the quote of the episode.
Fine. But you know, did you guys happen to do a little wink and a nod to the? We have to have the Babylon 5 treaty now. We need more money and the mutual defense pact. And
Yeah,
Avalon
we had
was just placing it. It's like, oh my god. It's like, do you want Russian protection? Here's how you get it.
yeah, except Babylon 5 isn't the mob. This wasn't necessarily a shakedown, so
No, but the way Barnabas sometimes does things, it's like, if Barnabas gone, you don't want to disappoint her.
yeah,
Nah,
that's true.
I don't want to be in her firing range. No, thank you.
No. Anyway, well, Jay, Fiona, any final thoughts before we close up?
No, I'm just happy to see the next one now.
Mm-hmm. Ship of Tears will be the next one.
Yeah, and this time I'll put a post-it note so I don't get distracted by writing. Because I really do need to put post-it notes on my things, so otherwise I don't remember things.
And you know, that's a Straczynski way. He says everything's on post-its, and I put everything on post-its when I do storyboards or writing ideas. I even have a post-it right now. I'll take a picture of it and share in the chat. But I mean our little Council One's one. But I get all my ideas at post-its. They save a lot. They're great.
Well, to quote a favorite movie of mine, let all prayers be in post-its.
Yo, I do like the fact that these side characters.
Bruce Almighty. My will be done.
Dur, dur, dur. But no, I do like the fact that a lot of these side characters get hired out. Like the one teenage telepath got to go to Minbar to help them out, and then this guy gets to go to Narn to help them, put a good thumping into people.
I mean, like, these guys got a good deal. Like, even Thomas, he got to go around.
Yeah, he got to take up the mantle.
The Grail.
To look for the Grail. Yep, that's right.
It makes me wonder, did he eventually meet up with the Arthur stand-in and be like, you know what? It's something interesting over here, too. Possibly. I think they would have made a good team.
They would have, actually, now that I think about it.
You think about it? Yeah, dang. Yeah, totally. So,
hey, one of our fan fictions, we got to make it happen. I'm making a post-it now.
Whenever I finish my Star Wars one, I will sit down and write a little short B5 one with Arthur and Jinx or Thomas. So anyway,
can't wait.
Yeah, well, it won't be a super long one, but yeah, I'll definitely write it. So
I do have to wonder how Mr. Arthur was able to get on the ship with the sword. Did he get kind of like a Ren Fair pass?
Nah, he probably went through Drazi space. They're all, very, loose over there.
Because it's like you can't really claim a sword as a religious artifact if you're human, can you?
No, if you're Drazi, remember that one guy with in Parliament of Dreams? He had his little blade. Nothing will stop me and the blade. Tell you what, I'll put it on this side and outside the airlock. If you get it without breathing in it, you can have it. So that's why I think he went through Drazi space.
He had a Drazi ID. I was adopted. Like Worf.
There you go.
Good grief.
It ain't easy being Drazi.
This is true.
Oh my.
And maybe he was in Drazi space and he bounced around the time they had to pull a sash out of a bucket. Maybe that's why he was. I don't know. I'm thinking too much into this now.
Although, you know what? Honestly, depending on how things go, I remember when Garibaldi took that trip to the Jazi homeworld, it seemed like some of their measures were more lax than other places. So you
Right?
never know.
That's what I'm saying. You know, they had a murder going on, and then people are still walking around like, "Hey, I gotta get to the market."
Anyway, all right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. But Koj, Fiona, thank you both for tuning in today, and I appreciate it as always. Okay. Now I'll pop this up here too, real quick before we do close out. TV tropes. JMS originally wanted Michael York as Sheridan, but P10 said no. Okay.
Huh.
Would he have been too expensive? Maybe at the time. I don't.
Possibly. Very, very possibly. So, and Beer 31, thank you for popping that, for bringing that little nugget of knowledge to us. Appreciate it. So, well, as I said, we're going to go ahead and close out here, but I want to thank my fellow council members, Laura Koj and Fiona Wolf, for being here this afternoon. And of course, Zod Rider, we miss you, man. Hope you're doing well. We'll look forward to seeing you back here. And of course, Mountains of Elysium. Hope everything you and the missus got everything straightened out with your little bit of business. And of course, to our good friend, Classic Comics, wherever you are, bud. We miss you, and we hope you're doing well, and we look forward to when you return to us. So, I do want to let everybody know I will be over on another channel later this evening, Orange Hat Reviews and everything. He is doing another one of his Versus streams, and I am going to be making an appearance there. Orange Hat is a good friend. He and I have worked. Have done several streams and videos together, and he is a good channel. He is a little bit outspoken at times, but that is part of his character, and I have come to respect it, and I respect his perspective. But we're going to be debating. Me and the rest of the panel are going to be debating in this particular versus streams who would win a fight between two of the greatest world devourers in science fiction, that being Galactus and, of course, Unicron from the Transformers universe. So, and that'll be at 8 p.m. Central Time. So, I will once he sends out once he tweets out the link, I will retweet it and everything, and hope to see some of y'all there. If not, definitely check out the replay. And of course, we will be back next Friday at our normal time of 2:30. Anything with another installment of the Council of Ones. And I do want to let y'all know I'm going to be doing a couple of movie reviews next week. So I'll be sending out updates on that and so on. But Koj, Fiona, before we close, do you have anything in terms of your channels that you want to plug before we go?
I'm just trying to link people's channels because it's like my obsession of writing pretty much like, you're a silly person. You totally forgot what time it was. Just like that little white rabbit in Alice. Oh no, I'm late.
Yes. and you know what I say to that?
How could you rent the thing anyway without a credit card?
I have a gasoline card.
Start by wiping that fucking dumbass smile.
I've been wearing the same underwear since Tuesday.
Yep.
Anyway, Koj, you got anything coming up in your neck of the woods that you want to plug before we go?
No, nothing serious. If there's anything else, I'll tweet it on Twitter. I'm still taking a little break, but I do have some gameplays and stuff I'm coming up. But I'm definitely going to do a big thing. May 17th. I was going to do it April 17th, but my mother's birthday came in the way, in a good way, and I also didn't want to get in the way. People want to go to Justice Con, so everything's pushed off to May 17th. And just check out my channel if there's anything cool, but nothing big popping up yet. But I'll let you know on my social media, so do follow. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Anyway, and it's always, Koj, always a pleasure to have you here, and Fiona, same for you. And again, to everybody that was in the chat today, Mountains of Elysium, Beer 31, Lewis X Sparrow, Positive Candor, and to everybody else that was lurking, Thank you for tuning in this afternoon, and I hope you all enjoy this. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you have not. We are actually 2. I repeat, 2 away from 400. So we're right on the edge of doing that that next watch party for one of my favorite movies, The Last Starfighter. So
Yes,
we're
that
that
movie's
close.
so good.
I do
I
have
know.
fun with that one. I
Yes.
do. Yes.
Anyways, folks, thank you all for being here this afternoon or this evening, wherever you're at. And until next time, this is a Council of One saying, Zooty Zooty, Zoot Zoot.
Zoot.
Fiona, that's where you can say it too.
Really? But no, I was looking at this, but Excelsior's domain is mentioning he or she unboxed some Eagle Moss stuff. I don't know what
Okay.
Eagle Moss is, but
I'll tell you off air.
okay then.
Fiona, say goodnight, Gracie.
Zoot zoot.
Zooty zoot zoot.